Well, good afternoon. I haven't dropped anything in a while, and Hanukkah is coming up. And a number of years ago, I wrote a Hanukkah Haggadah. If you're familiar with a Haggadah such as Passover, which is the most famous and most commonly used one, it basically, Haggadah means order, and so there's an order to kind of celebrating the holiday. In my book, which is nicely bound, it's paperback, and I have an introduction. Then I move on to the table is set, and then the actual Haggadah portion called the Festival of Light, and that goes on for a number of pages. There are biblical verses in there, as well as from the book of Maccabees, which is where the story comes from. And then there's a Who Knows One. If any of you are Jewish, you know that melody, and you sing it around the Passover table. So it's got a section of that. And then daily meditations for Hanukkah. Such as day one is the oneness of God. And then there is a section of my favorite menorahs. These are pictures in color. I even have one in there that my late brother put in from the National Menorah. And then finally a section called Up from the Ashes, which is dedicated to renewal and rebirth. So anyway, if you're interested, there is going to be a link down below if you wish to purchase a copy. They are currently $12.95, and I believe it's $3 shipping. I'm going to limit it to 2 per household. Currently, as the supply is limited, and it is 46 pages long. I think you'll enjoy it. I'm going to read a little bit of it to you now. Introduction, A Hanukkah Haggadah. Hanukkah is the Jewish festival of lights. It generally falls in December, but can come as early as November or carry over into January. This year, by the way, it starts on Christmas night. On the Jewish calendar, it begins the 25th of Kislev. On the solar calendar, it begins near the winter solstice, the darkest and most foreboding time of the year. Hanukkah is the only celebrated Jewish holiday not found in the Hebrew Scriptures. Rather, its telling is found in the first few chapters of the apocryphal book known as First Maccabees. Hanukkah has remained a relatively obscure holiday throughout the ages for several reasons. First, the rabbis have historically frowned on the idea of revolution and civil war, given the immense loss of life generally associated with such activities. Second, the Hasmoneans, the heroes of the Hanukkah story, later became corrupt and found themselves in grave opposition to early rabbinical Judaism. Third, our commemoration of stories involving civil and religious revolt might not sit well with our host countries, wherein we have found ourselves throughout the ages. Instead, the rabbis have directed our attention to the miracle of oil, beautifully described in Jewish literature as the mainstay of our Hanukkah experience and observance. The legend tells that when Judas the Maccabee and his fellow zealots regained control of the temple and removed the pagan idols from therein, they returned the menorah to within the Holy of Holies. The problem then became that there was but one flask of oil to burn in the eternal candlestick, enough for but one day. As more was prepared, not being a quick task, mind you, a miracle occurred. The single flask of oil miraculously burned for 8 days until the new supply was ready for use. Thus, the 8 days of Hanukkah were born. Also, and I did not put this in the book, but it seems to follow the example of Sukkot. Sukkot is a 7-day holiday, and then the 8th day is the day of abiding, what is it, Shemini as Taret. I think I mispronounced that, but you know what I'm talking about. And so it's an 8-day holiday, and they think maybe when all of this was done, they kind of made the holiday similar to Sukkot. Reading on. While a charming tale, the traditional rendition dramatically downplays the most important miracle of all, man's successful fight against the powers of oppression and the subsequent cleansing and restoration of our holy temple. The true miracle of Hanukkah is man's regeneration, renewal, and rededication. The author does not discount the miracle of oil venerated by the sages, and indeed the Maccabee text does not seemingly give a reason for the 8-day celebration. Rather, I wish to refocus our attention on the man-made miracle. Indeed, as man does his part, so God does his. I'm often reminded that the Reed Sea did not part until the people moved forward, just as none of the plagues occurred without human interaction preceding them. Only when man puts his foot forward, so to speak, does God outstretch his powerful arm. Certainly, there are messianic overtones to the Hanukkah story. Judas the Maccabee and his father Mattathias, along with their kinsmen who followed them into battle, were messiahs. They overcame immense obstacles and powerful oppressive principles that prevented the Jewish people from their divine task. Other messiahs have presented themselves on the stage of human history throughout time. Moses, Kings Hosea and Hezekiah, Nehemiah, and countless others who arose to the occasion and sought to return Israel to her rightful role as a light to the nations and a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. In each generation, Israel is called upon to bring forth messianic sparks and to relight the menorah within. Only then can we truly serve God and man. Hanukkah reminds us of this duty both personally and collectively. Regardless of one's messianic beliefs, all would generally agree that the messianic age is a state of yet unrealized perfection, one where, as the lion and the lamb will be at peace, so will all mankind. Certainly there are messianic overtones to the Hanukkah story that might seem at first glance to point only to God's supernatural intervention into human affairs. However, when these are viewed from the larger perspective, presented so clearly in the rest of the text, God's involvement is that of empowerment rather than direct action. Whether one considers the Messiah as a literal person, a perfect age to come, or a lofty ideal, the Hanukkah message rings loud and clear. What we do, we must do ourselves, and now, and with God's help. That was my quote, by the way. Let us rekindle the menorah within. Let us strive during this season and indeed every day for peace with our fellow man, reconciliation with our God, and renewed commitment to him and to the service of mankind required of us by his commandments. So may it be in our lifetimes. Amen. And then we go over setting the table, and then on page 8, the Haggadah itself begins. I wanted to read a little bit of the story. This is from First Maccabees, and I do have permission from the online author to use this information. And it happened that after Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chedem, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth, and went through to the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. And he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries to him. And after these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable and had been brought up with him from his youth, and he parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years, and then he died, and his servants bare rule, every one in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 130th and 7th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days there went out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, ignoring God's commandment to take heed to thyself, lest thou make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land whither thou goest, lest they be a snare in the midst of thee. And then it goes on talking about the things that had happened to the people being murdered, their infants as well. By the way, this is not a PG-13 book. There is some violence in the book of Maccabees, so you might want to read it yourself before you decide if it's appropriate for your children. And I'm not going to label this post as appropriate for children either. In those days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simon, a priest of the sons of Jorab, from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Modin. And he had 5 sons, and we list those. And when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and Jerusalem, he said, Woe is me! Wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people and of the holy city, and to dwell there, when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers. Her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets, and her young men with the sword of the enemy. And it goes on to continue along that route. And then the true miracle, or the beginning of the miracle. So then Mattathias and his sons rent their clothes and put on sackcloth and mourned very sore. In the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city of Modin and to make them sacrifice. And when many of Israel came unto them, Matthias also and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officers and said to Matthias on this wise, Thou art a ruler and an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore thou come first to fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done, yea, and the men of Judah, and such as remain in Jerusalem. So shalt thou and thy house be in the number of the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. Then Matthias answered and spake with a loud voice, Although all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him, and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments, the small case his, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion, either on the right hand or the left. Now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar, which is at Modin, according to the king's commandment. Which thing, when Matthias saw it, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled, neither could he forbear his anger, according to judgment, wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. Also the king's commissioner, who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. Thus dealt he zealously for the law of God, like Phinehas did unto Zambri, the son of Salom. And Matthias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, Whoever is zealous of the law and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me. So he and his sons fled into the mountains, and left all that they ever had in the city. And so the story goes on. It's a very interesting and moving story. It's a sad story at times. and then we move into the Who Knows One. Oh, by the way, in the Haggadah itself, it's customary in the Passover Haggadah to drink 4 cups of wine, and I wrote my book, my Haggadah, with 4 cups of wine as well. So Who Knows One, and then, as I said, the daily meditations. For instance, day 1 is the oneness of God. Day 2 is the 2 tablets, and that goes on, and there's a longer meditation on the 8th day. And then, let's see, there are a number of quotations and a number of footnotes. Then my favorite menorahs, as I mentioned, and then the final section, Up from the Ashes. You'll probably remember that from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. So if you'd like a copy of the book, just hit that link below, and I'm going to try to figure out a way to maybe discount a little bit the books with a code, and if I figure that out, I'm kind of new to this selling on Square, but if I can figure it out, I'll do that. It won't be too much. It might save you a couple of bucks, but I worked really, really hard on this book, and so I'd appreciate it if you're interested, you get a copy. If not, I hope you enjoyed this time, and we will see you again. Shalom.